Hello, and welcome to this introductory video walking through Query in Kubit. When you first visit Kubit, you'll drop onto our homepage here with helpful links to creating a report or dashboard, as well as resources, your recently viewed activity, and any favorite reports that you might have. In this video, we're going to be creating a report, so let's go ahead and click there. As you can see, I'm dropped directly into Query, and let's talk quickly about what Query does. Query is a wonderful report for time series and user segmentation analysis, answering questions like how many users performed X event over Y number of days. You can get even more specific and filter to particular parts of your data, create breakdowns to get more granular, and add user segments so that you can understand how different cohorts are behaving. The first thing to know about Query is a measure. A measure is simply a way that we want to count an action or event performed. You have two options here. You can first select how you want to count. In many cases, users want to count events or unique users. In your instance, you may see some slightly different lists here depending on the unique IDs that you would want to be counting. So for example, you could see unique users, unique visitors, devices, etc. In this example, we're going to count events, which is just simply going to count the number of times an event occurred. Then I can select events from this drop-down list, or even more simply, I can come to my right-hand dictionary and select an event from my catalog. In this case, we're going to select main landing. If I go ahead and execute this really quickly, what I've just done is written a SQL query that's counting the number of events of users who perform main landing. We default to the last 7 days, and you'll see very quickly we have a line chart representing that data. Going a bit further, we can add things like filters, either globally to the entire report, or even filter based on a particular cohort of users. Let's choose global filter, and let's say in this instance, all I want to see is where my app equals iOS. If I then re-execute, I'll now only get data for users that performed main landing on the iOS app. As you can see, the data is different. But don't worry, let's say I want to go back to the original report that I started with. As you can see here on the left-hand side, my history is keeping track of all of the different reports I've executed. So we've talked about adding measures and filters. Let's get a little bit more advanced and talk about formulas. In Query, you can create measures either simple or what we call compound. When I add a compound measure, it simply means I'm adding additional measures to my analysis. In this case, let's say we also want to count the number of unique users that perform main landing. If I re-execute, what I'll see here instead is two lines, one representing the count of events and one representing the count of unique users, but all still filtered by app is equal to iOS. We represent each of these with a letter, so we can see measure A and measure B. Now we default to name these based on the events you've selected, but you do have the ability to come in and rename them. So we could simply just call this event counts rather than just main landing. Now let's say instead I actually want to take the average per day. So how many times per day does a user perform the main landing event? So essentially, what's B divided by A? I can come up to my formulas here and further customize how I want to represent this data and write a similar kind of Excel format formula, A divided by B. A being this measure and B being this measure. I could even go a step further, adding parentheses and hard numbers, like let's say I want to multiply this by 100. In this case, I'm just simply going to divide A by B so that I can get an average event per user. When I click execute again, we'll see that now I get a single result line, which is the result of the formula that I've just created, A divided by B. So as you can see, on average, users perform main landing around 3.75 times per day over the last 7 days. I can add filters to several different areas. In this case, we're just looking at app equals iOS, But let's say instead I don't want to filter the entire report to app equal iOS. I simply just want to filter maybe my numerator. So of all of my users performing main landing, what percentage of them perform it on an iOS device and how frequently? By changing the filter to this particular measure, I'm now only filtering this measure result instead of the entire report, which is what this filter did. So once I re-execute, now I'm saying A is the number of times the main landing was fired on an iOS device, dividing it by all of the users on my platform visiting the main landing page. So now I can see that of all the users on iOS visit this page about 2.49 times per day and then steeply drop off near the end of the week. That may be cause for investigation, and I might need to learn more here. So we've talked about compound and simple measures, applying filters in different areas like on your measure or at the report globally, as well as creating formulas. The other important thing to note, especially about query, is being able to apply breakdowns. So breakdowns are going to give you a bit more granular view of the data and bifurcate it by any of the different field values applicable. In this case, it might be interesting to break something like this down by, let's say, plan type, because I want to know if different plan types are driving different behaviors on my main landing page, specifically for iOS customers. Applying that breakdown is now going to give me different result lines for each of the different plan type data that is present. So as we can see now, I have different bars representing different plan types, general, premium plus, and premium, all demonstrating the result measure that I have above, as well as overall. So this is your baseline. This is, of all of the groups, this is sort of your overall average. If I don't want to see that, I can simply just click it and toggle it off. And let's say even further, I don't care about premium. All I want to compare is the general and the premium plus audience. And I can see that they're doing this action on iOS at roughly the same rate, though the drop-off we see at the end of the week is much more prominent in the premium plus group as opposed to the general. So this might give me a better indication of where a problem or an issue might reside. So we've talked a lot about the builder. There are several other different features within here. This is meant to be an introductory video, but please feel free to jump in, play around, and see what you can build yourself. Once you've actually built your visualization, we do give you several features and options on how to customize it. For example, I can view this as a line chart, a bar chart, or even a stacked column if I only care to see it in that way. In this case, a line chart is actually preferred to me, and I can go ahead and click result. At the bottom, we'll see a table of all of the different values that are represented on the chart, as well as the underlying numbers that are generating your result. And once I get a visualization nice and ready, I can do several things with it. I can save these settings to make sure that when I revisit this report, it looks like I expect. I can also add it to a dashboard if I am monitoring and managing this metric and I want to collaborate with others on my team or just simply keep up with different KPIs. If I wanted to share this link with a colleague, I can just click this copy chart link here. And if I wanted to go even further, potentially view the SQL behind it, or even export the data to a CSV, I can do that. Lastly, if this report in particular is one that I want to keep an eye on over time, I can create a schedule here, which will refresh this report for me at regular interval and make sure that when I visit Kubit, the data is as fresh as I need it to be. Hope you enjoyed this introductory video to query. Please let us know if you have any questions.